When it comes to design criteria, one person who has to be mentioned is the German designer Dieter Rams, who is in his 80s this year. Many of his design ideas were put forward in the 1960s at the Braun Company in Germany. But today, they are still held up as classics by many good young designers. For example, the American designer that we mentioned in a previous lesson, Ivy, has a lot of similarities to Rams. For example, they both came into the company in their early 20s and became department heads in their 30s. Rams was born in 1932, joined Braun in 1955, and by 1961 was the leader of Braun's design and development department. His experience led him to play a very important role in the development of Braun's design. Ivy was born in 1967, entered Apple in 1992, and was discovered by Steve Jobs in 1997 when he was 30 years old. At the time, it was said that he had been put on Apple's layoff list, but Jobs saw his designs and liked them so much, so he was brought back and later became Apple's vice president of design. You'll find a lot of similarities between Apple's design and Braun's in the 1960s. We can understand this as Ivy saluting his predecessor in this way. In the 1960s, Rams came up with the 10 criteria for design. In other words, what does good design look like? Rams gave the following 10 answers. First, good design is innovative. The so-called innovation is unique. It is a significant improvement compared to the previous design. In 1997, Ivy became head of Apple Computer's industrial design department, and the first product he developed was the iMac series of computers, which became available in 1998. Today, when we see this series of computers, we still feel they are amazing. He first introduced this colorful fruit color to the computer industry. Before that, what was the computer like? Some students may have such an understanding. For example, before this, the popular PC was actually proposed by IBM. So, what is IBM? It is the International Business Machines Corporation, which means that computers at the time were basically appearing as a business machine. So what did the business machine look like? It was white. All computers were white. There were also individual dark-colored computers, but they were also business-based, black or other colors. At that time, Acer had developed some dark green computers. But when iMac came out in 1998, the situation was broken, and it turned out that computers could be so good-looking, so beautiful, so full of personality. After such colorful computers entered the market, the computer market has been greatly affected, making the computer industry truly enter the era of personalization, the era of personal computers. Apple has also turned a profit with this product. This has led to the resurgence of the already troubled Apple Computer Incorporated. Second, good design makes a product useful. Any design must first meet the needs of people, whether it's a material function or a spiritual function. The first thing is to make the most of it. So the design has to think in terms of usefulness so that the design can be used by me and can be more useful. In the following picture, what you see is the design of the toilet in a cinema. It's very interesting. You know, sometimes a movie would be so attractive that you can't take your eyes off it. But what if you really need to use the restroom and need to go to the toilet halfway? You can't bear to leave the theater, afraid of missing any detail, any shot. I think this cinema is very thoughtful, with a large screen set up on the floor of your toilet that shows the movie in real time so you don't miss a single detail. I think a cinema like this will definitely be welcomed by a wider audience because the design is useful. And for each person in the audience, it is worth the price of the ticket. Third, good design is aesthetic. If useful design is more concerned with material aspects, then the value of aesthetic quality is more concerned with the mental function. When the material function is basically satisfied, our design should take more account of how to meet the spiritual needs of people. More designs have started paying attention to face value. In such a face-judging era, only good-looking designs can impress people. We can see such an example. Nongfu Springs has made a lot of improvements to the packaging design of its recently launched premium drinking water. That is, it visually enhances the added value of the product, so that when you see this water, you will feel that the water bottle is a work of art, and the water bottle is beautiful, not to mention the water inside. We often hear the example of choosing the wrong thing. What we call excessive packaging today is also about packaging exceeding the value of the product itself. And drinking water is also an example. Fourth, good design helps a product to be understood. There are various buttons in life, each corresponding to a different operation: spin, press, or pull. Some designs require people to understand how to operate them with just one glance. There is a famous psychologist in the United States called Donald Norman, who once taught for a long time at the University of California at San Diego. In 1988, he wrote a book called Why We Love or Hate Everyday Product. The book was later translated into Chinese and became a must-read introductory textbook for everyone who studies design. The Chinese name is The Design of Everyday Thing. Interested students can search this book online. And in this book, there is such an example. What kind of door opens inward? What kind of door opens outward? In other words, what kind of shapes are used for push and pull doors? It's considered in the book how a door lets someone know it's opening inward as soon as they see it. On this door, install a horizontal metal strip. In the middle of this door, there is a long horizontal strip of metal to tell us that by pushing the strip with our hands, we can easily push the door open. So the door is pushed inward. What is the outward pulled door like? A wooden door has a vertical handle on its outside to guide you to pull the handle to open the door. So the door is opened outward. In 1988, Donald Norman first mentioned this example in his book. And in 2008, 20 years later, I came to this university and found this design is still in use. Fifth, good design is unobtrusive. What does it mean to be unobtrusive? Can design be unobtrusive? I understand that the so-called unobtrusive is supposed to be unadorned. We often hear the phrase low-key luxury with substance. A really good design does not necessarily rely on some fancy decorations or some colors to win. In modern design, it is often seen that the simpler the color, the more it reflects the essence of the design. For example, as we know, when Jobs was alive, iPhone had only two colors, black and white. But when the iPhone 5 went on sale, Apple introduced a range of other colors to cater to the market, such as golden, which you are familiar with. Speaking of which, we found that ROM's criteria of design has also changed a bit as the times have changed. Therefore, the design and the criteria of design we are talking about are not static, but according to market changes and need to be adjusted. 6. Good design is honest. The so-called honest design is a design that truly faces the world and does not deceive. The honesty of design is shown in the faithfulness to the materials and the faithfulness to the quality. 7th, good design is durable. Of course, we also mentioned earlier that these 10 criteria of ROM's were put forward in the 1960s. He believes that a good design should be durable and benefit people for a long time. But it was at that same time that a very strange system called planned commodity abolishment emerged in the United States. What is the planned commodity abolishment? That is, it first appeared in the US auto industry, which wanted some changes to car models every 3 years and some major modifications every 5 years to force consumers to consciously go for a new model every 3 to 5 years. Of course, this kind of design method can also be seen in Apple today. Apple, as we know, makes big updates to its products every year. Sometimes I am not even familiar with my iPhone 8 yet, and then the iPhone 10 comes out. Perhaps for the consumer, this means that he or she has to constantly go after new products. We often hear jokes like this on the internet. I dropped the 5S on purpose. Why? Because that's when the iPhone 6 came out. So this strategy by Apple and the planned commodity abolishment we mentioned earlier have also been questioned by many environmentalists. But ROM's criteria for design still plays their part in many areas. 8th, good design is thorough to the last detail. A good design should have details. A student once held up a diagram like this to me. Teacher, this diagram shows good designers, bad designers, and general designers, respectively. What is the difference between them? Everyone, look at this picture. The same design, the permutation and combination of the square, circle, and triangle. Maybe a bad designer would just put them there casually, with 3 graphics spaced about right. What about the general designer? The general designer will consider that the distance between the square and the circle is closer, so the distance between the circle and the triangle needs to be adjusted to achieve visual balance. What's the difference between a good designer and a general designer? Did everyone notice the difference? If you look closely, you will find that when a good designer designs this figure, the triangle is out of line. Why is there such a change? Because in the same area, at the same height, a triangle will appear smaller than a square. So a good designer has to pay attention to these detailed issues in order to get better results. 9th, good design is concerned with the environment. Because in this world today, the environment has been destroyed to an extreme. We worry today about whether our drinking water is hygienic and clean, and we worry about whether the air we breathe is polluted. Designers should also have a sense of social responsibility and influence the world through design. Electric vehicle design is one such example. Maybe electric cars sell for more than regular fuel cars, and maybe the daily savings you make on gas isn't enough to make up for that price difference. But the psychological satisfaction and sense of responsibility to society that can be gained by buying an electric car is beyond the reach of a fuel car. 10th, Roms told us that good design is as little design as possible. When design has become a subject of hype, when design serves the purpose of more business interests, design that does not need to be designed is the best design. Look at this picture. The designer has planned a lot of walking routes in the community, but the user did not follow the designer's planned routes, but walked out their own path in the lawn. The path taken by users themselves is sometimes more reasonable than the path planned by designers. All standards are not set in stone and can be adjusted to suit the actual situation. And the same is true of what we are saying here about Rom's criteria. The only unchanging criterion is to serve people, and the only unchanging criterion is to serve people from the user's perspective.